This is a quiet story, told in darkness. The mountain that remembers. A man learns to live beyond effort, allowing life to move through him without resistance. Wei left the capital quietly. He did not seek permission from the ministers. He did not craft an explanation for colleagues. He did not even tell Shen the exact day he would depart. He simply felt a gentle shift inside, like a reed leaning when wind whispered through it, and he knew it was time. Shen had sensed it long before Wei had. On their final evening together, Shen poured tea into a small clay cup and placed it between them. The steam curled upward like a thin, soft thread. "You have learned to see," Shen said. "Now you must learn to be seen by the world." Wei frowned slightly. "Be seen? By whom?" "By the mountains," Shen said, as if naming something ordinary. "By the wind. By the spaces between things." Wei absorbed that slowly. Shen continued. "A sage perceives clearly, but an immortal perceives without needing to be a perceiver." Wei didn't fully understand, but he felt the truth in the shape of the words. "Where do I go?" Wei asked. Shen smiled faintly. "Where clarity pulls you, you will know." Wei bowed deeply, then walked out into the cool dusk. The palace lanterns, flickering like tiny stars, scattered across the corridors. He carried little, just a small bundle of clothing, a water skin, a knife, and a quiet mind. And then he walked. The first days were simple. Wei followed the river north, through villages and fields streaked with autumn gold. Farmers pulled the last of the season's crops, their faces calm with the rhythm of work. Children ran after each other between straw piles. Dogs slept in the shade of stone walls. Wei observed without interference, without projecting his thoughts into what he saw. It was the first sign of a shift. He didn't interpret or judge the world the way he once had. He simply met it. At night, he slept under small roofs offered by kind strangers, or beneath trees when the sky was clear. In the mornings, mist rose off the fields like breath rising from the earth. By the third day, the land began to change. Hills rolled into taller slopes. The river narrowed, gathering speed. The air became crisp and thin. Wei felt the mountains before he saw them. A presence, a listening, a quiet that was not empty, but immensely full. When Wei finally reached the base of the first mountain range, he felt a strange sense of recognition, like stepping into a place that had been waiting for him long before he was born. The mountains towered in silent, ancient shapes, their peaks wrapped in veils of cloud. Pines clung to their sides like old companions. Rivers carved paths where stone loud. Wei stood here for a long time, breathing in the cold, mineral-rich air. He whispered, "Do you know me?" The mountains did not answer, and yet their silence was a kind of acknowledgement. Here there was nothing to impress, nothing to perform, nothing to protect. His identity, his ambitions, his memories, all of it felt insignificant beside stone that had existed through countless ages of rise and decay. He felt small, but the smallness was not painful. It was honest. He took the first step onto the mountain path. The climb began gently, weaving through cedar forests and moss-covered boulders. Wei felt his breath steady, his stride lengthen naturally. Each step carried him deeper into a quiet that did not suppress thought, but made thought less necessary. Hours passed in stillness. Not silence, stillness. Birds called to one another. Wind rustled the needles overhead. Occasionally, a branch snapped beneath his foot. But all of it felt like one continuous movement. Wei's awareness softened into the world's awareness. As he rounded a bend in the path, he saw a stone arch formed not by hands, but by time. Two massive boulders leaning against each other, creating a small passage just large enough for a single person. It felt like a natural gate, humble, quiet, but undeniably threshold-like. Wei stopped before it. A faint tightening rose in his chest. Not fear, but the instinctive hesitation that comes when the self senses it is about to shed another layer. He placed a hand on the cool stone. Something subtle passed through him. A feeling, not a thought. If you go through, you will not return as you are. Wei breathed. He did not retreat. He stepped under the arch. The air on the other side felt different. Not colder, not heavier, but clearer. So clear that his own thoughts echoed as faintly as footsteps in snow. Wei continued on. Night came quickly in the mountains. Shadows lengthened and merged until the forest became a deep, soft mass. Wei found a small clearing where moonlight pooled onto the ground like pale ash. He sat. Not to meditate, but because the clearing felt like a place where one did not sit so much as settle. He listened. He watched the sky. He breathed. After a long time, he sensed someone else nearby. Wei did not startle. He simply looked. A man sat at the edge of the clearing, thin, still, wrapped in simple robes. His posture straight as a cedar trunk. His presence blended with the night, making it hard to tell where the man ended and the darkness began. Wei bowed his head. I didn't see you. You weren't supposed to, the man replied. His voice was calm, as if he'd been waiting for Wei without waiting at all. Wei asked, Are you a hermit? A word for people who don't like crowded rooms, the man said. Wei smiled. Then he asked, Why are you here? The man said, To listen. To what? To whatever speaks when the world stops shouting. Wei absorbed that. The man studied Wei with mild curiosity. You breathe like someone who has begun to thin. Wei blinked. Thin. Not physically, the man said. You're beginning to see through your own edges. Wei felt something flutter inside. Not fear, not pride, something else. Why does that matter? He asked. The hermit gestured toward the moon. It is difficult to become intimate with the vast when you cling to a small shape. Wei lowered his gaze. I don't know what I should do next. Nothing, the hermit said. The mountain will show you. It always does. Wei waited for more, but the hermit closed his eyes and became quiet. So quiet that the forest seemed to lean in, listening. Wei sat behind him, not close enough to intrude, not far enough to separate. They breathed with the night. After a long stillness, Wei felt a change, as if something in him turned its face toward a light he had not noticed before. The hermit opened his eyes. You can continue north, he said softly. The valley ahead remembers what people forget. Wei didn't ask what that meant. The mountain wind brushed through the clearing, cold and clean. The hermit closed his eyes again, fading back into the quiet. Wei stood. He bowed. Then he walked into the night. The path ahead held no promise, no certainty, no instruction. But Wei felt guided, not by direction, but by the mountain's presence itself. He disappeared into the dark trees like someone moving deeper into himself. Wei walked through the night as if the mountain continued to carry him. The path curved gently upward, cutting through stands of pine whose needles whispered like a distant tide. The moon drifted behind thin clouds. The air thinned, sharpening the edges of sound. He did not feel alone. Not because of spirits or beings, but because the mountain's presence was so vast and steady that solitude felt like being held. By dawn, a cool, pale light seeped between the trees. The path broadened until it opened into a wide hollow between two ridges. Wei stopped. The place felt aware, not conscious in a human way, but quietly awake, as if the valley itself had memory. A soft breeze moved through, carrying scents of stone, wet earth, and moss. Birdsong rang in clear tones. The sky stretched above him in a muted blue. Wei whispered, "Is this the valley that the hermit meant?" The valley answered with silence, but a silence so complete it felt like acknowledgement. Wei walked deeper. He sat on a flat stone near a small stream. Its water trickled lightly over pebbles, each sound crisp and distinct. Wei listened. At first, he heard the stream plainly. Then he noticed a faint echo. Not from canyon walls, not from air, but something subtler. The sound seemed to reflect inside him. The valley mirrored his noticing back to him, as if his awareness had created a second, internal version of the stream. It wasn't mystical. It wasn't illusion. It was simply what happened when the mind was not cluttered. We understood. The valley reflects the clarity of whoever sits within it. He closed his eyes. His breath rose and fell. A memory of childhood drifted through. His mother rinsing fabric in the river. The smell of dye on her hands. The memory passed easily, gently. Another memory came. His shame in the palace hall. The stinging mockery from others. It passed too, softened by the valley's spaciousness. Then a worry surfaced. What if he was chasing a path that had no end? The worry rose like a bubble, and then it popped, quietly, without effort. The valley did not erase anything. It simply made room for everything. Wei opened his eyes. He felt lighter, not emptied, but unburdened. After some time, Wei stood and wandered until he reached a large boulder, half buried at the valley's center. Its surface was smooth on one side and ridged on the other, as if the weather had shaped it in two different languages. Something about it drew him closer. He placed his palm against the smooth side. It was cool, still, immense. Suddenly a quiet thought rose from somewhere deeper than his own thinking. This stone has no anxiety about living or dying. No need to be different than it is. No need to be different than it is. No story, no self. The insight wasn't revelatory. It was obvious. So obvious that he wondered how he had missed it all his life. He whispered, "The stone is not wise. It is simply free." Another realization accompanied it. Freedom is not a state of life. Freedom is the absence of friction with being alive. Wei rested his forehead lightly against the stone. He wasn't reverent. He wasn't emotional. He was simply aligned. The stone was stone, and he was himself. And both were perfectly complete, without comparison. Wei stepped back. The colder breeze swept through the valley. Wei noticed something unusual. The wind formed a long, thin thread of motion between two trees, like invisible fabric being pulled across the air. He watched. The thread shifted, loosened, reformed, softened, vanished, reappeared. Nothing held it. Nothing shaped it. It simply existed wherever conditions allowed. Wei's breath deepened. He whispered, "This is immortality." Not living forever. Not transcending nature. Not escaping death. Simply being as natural as wind. Appearing, moving, dissolving, returning, without fear or identity. He thought of the countless moments in his life when he had clenched, resisted, defended, postured, reacted. None of these moments had ever been necessary. He had always been fighting the thread of life instead of becoming part of it. Wei sat quietly in the grass. A single feather drifted past him, caught in the thread of wind. He watched its path without desire to alter it. He saw it land softly at his feet. He did not pick it up. He did not assign meaning. He simply breathed with the world. As afternoon stretched into evening, Wei remained in the valley. The air cooled. Shadows lengthened. The sky turned a pale wash of fading gold. That's when he noticed a figure standing across the valley. The figure hadn't approached, hadn't arrived. He was simply there, as if he had been standing the whole time, and Wei's awareness had only now grown wide enough to include him. The figure was robed simply, with the staff resting lightly at his side. His posture was relaxed, solid, unhurried. Wei walked toward him. The figure did not move. When Wei was close enough, he bowed gently. "Were you waiting for me?" "No," the man said. "You were waiting for yourself." Wei felt no confusion, only understanding. "What is this valley?" Wei asked. "A place that remembers," the man answered. "Remembers what?" The man smiled. "The shape you have when you stop pretending." Wei's chest loosened. The man gestured toward the far northern ridge. "You'll find the step beyond Sagehood there." Wei inhaled. He felt a subtle tremor inside. Not fear, not excitement, but the awareness of crossing into a deeper layer of being. "I don't know what to look for," Wei said. "You won't need to," the man replied. "Immortality sees you long before you see it." Wei bowed again. The man nodded once, then returned his gaze to the valley. Wei took a step backward. When he blinked, the man was simply gone. Not vanished, not dissolved. Just no longer within the boundaries of Wei's awareness. Wei felt no shock. He felt ready. As the sky dimmed, he walked toward the northern ridge, toward whatever waited, toward whatever he would become, toward the place where self and world would finally meet without separation. The path to the northern ridge was narrow and steep, carved into the mountain like a forgotten thought etched into ancient memory. The air grew colder with each step. Pines gave way to low, wind-bent shrubs. The sky stretched wider, exposing the world with an almost unsettling clarity. Wei did not rush. His movements felt guided by something quieter than intention, a natural unfolding, a rhythm older than his own life, a soft tide rising inside him. As he climbed, the world grew sparse. Not empty, sparse. The more the world thinned, the more he sensed a presence that wasn't a presence. A kind of availability, a readiness in the air. It was like the mountain had cleared a space for him. Wei reached a narrow shelf of stone jutting out over a deep ravine. The drop was sheer, but the air felt strangely safe, like the mountain itself held the shelf in a long, steady hand. He stepped onto it. The moment both feet touched the stone, the wind softened, as if its edges were smoothed. Wei felt a warmth in his chest. Not emotional, not physical, something between. He whispered, "What is this place?" There was no answer, only the low hum of the world breathing. Wei sat at the edge of the shelf, legs dangling above the ravine. Clouds drifted below him. Birds glided on invisible currents far beneath his feet. Time thinned. Minutes lost their meaning. Hours dissolved into a continuous present. Wei watched everything without agenda. He felt no desire to become anything, no fear of not becoming, no sense of progress, no sense of loss, just presence. The shelf seemed to imitate him, still, unforced, quietly enduring. A soft vibration reached him. Not a noise, a resonance. It felt like the world exhaling, or remembering. Wei closed his eyes. At first, he heard only wind brushing stone. But beneath that, far beneath it, a low tone pulsed through the mountain. It wasn't mystical. It wasn't supernatural. It was simply the mountain's vastness pressing against his awareness. Its sheer mass created a hum so subtle humans rarely noticed it. But Wei noticed now. He let his breath fall in sync with it. The hum was patient. It had been humming for ages. It would hum long after Wei left this world. It held no story, no purpose, no judgment. And it welcomed him. Wei felt his thoughts thinning. Not quieting. Thinning. Like silk being stretched until light passed through. The hum deepened inside him. Suddenly, Wei understood something with clarity that required no language. Immortality is not duration. It is intimacy with everything that continues. The hum was not a teaching. It was simply what remained when the self stopped holding itself apart. When Wei opened his eyes, he saw a shape standing a few steps away. A silhouette against the sky. It was the same man from the valley. Or perhaps not the same. Perhaps a continuation. He wasn't sure, and it didn't matter. The figure stood with the ease of someone who belonged wherever he stood. "You came," the man said. Wei nodded. He didn't ask how the man had arrived. The mountain didn't require explanations. "What is this place?" Wei asked. "The ridge where the world becomes thin enough for you to see through it," the man said. Wei looked out over the sweeping expanse. The cliffs, the distant rivers, the faint outlines of valleys layered like watercolor. "Feels like the world is barely here," Wei whispered. "It is barely anything," the man replied. "And it is completely everything." Wei didn't need more. The man pointed to the ravine below. "What do you see?" Wei gazed into the depth. "I see clouds," he said, "and air moving through the space where nothing holds it." The man nodded. "And what is the difference between the space below and the space inside you?" Wei felt a subtle shiver. Not fear, not cold. He answered, "There is no difference." The man smiled faintly. "Now you are almost ready." They stood together in silence for a long time. The wind brushed their robes lightly. Clouds drifted. The sun warmed the stone in slow, patient waves. Finally the man said, "Wei, look at me." Wei turned. The man's eyes were calm, reflecting the sky. "In the palace, you learn to see others. In the valley, you learn to see yourself. Here, you will learn to see without anyone doing the seeing." Wei's breath caught. "I don't know how," he said softly. "You're not supposed to know," the man replied. "Knowing is the last veil." Wei stood still. The man placed a hand a few inches above Wei's chest, not touching, not forcing, just hovering. "Feel this," the man said. The ridge narrowed. The sky widened. His steps felt both weightless and grounded. Everything around him seemed to breathe with him. air, stone, light, distance. He did not seek immortality. He did not try to understand it. He simply lived it, without effort, with each step becoming less of a step and more of a joining. The ridge led way higher until the world around him thinned into a quiet vastness that felt almost suspended between earth and sky. There were no more trees, only stone, wind, and the slow drift of clouds brushing the mountain's flank. Way walked until the ridge widened into a high plateau ringed by cliffs. In the center lay a single stone slab worn smooth by centuries of weather. He approached, feeling no anticipation, no fear, no ambition. Only openness. A hollow that was not emptiness, but readiness. He sat on the slab. The air was incredibly still. Even the wind softened, as though it had taken a seat beside him. The sky stretched wide above, pale and deep. Shadows moved slowly across the stone. Breath entered and left his body without effort. Wei did not meditate. He did not follow a practice. He did not reach inward or outward. He simply existed, and the mountain existed with him. After some time, minutes or hours, he couldn't tell, Wei noticed something shift in his perception. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing flashed. Nothing broke open. It was small, quiet, almost shy. He realized he could no longer tell where his awareness ended and the world began. The sky wasn't above him. It was simply part of the presence he was experiencing. The stone beneath him wasn't supporting him. It was simply part of the same field of existence. He felt no boundary, not because he had dissolved, but because the world had widened inside him. Breath came without someone breathing. Sight happened without someone seeing. Sound flowed through him without someone hearing. There was no center, no edges, no watcher, just presence. He whispered, "Is this immortality?" A breath moved across the plateau, as though answering not the question, but the space beneath it. Wei understood. Immortality is not the escape from death. It is the recognition that you were never separate enough to die. Not as a soul, not as a spirit, not as an idea, but as a part of the world that continued, whether or not Wei did. He exhaled. The breath felt like it belonged to everything. A soft sound reached Wei. The faint crunch of footfall on gravel. He opened his eyes. The man from before, the hermit, the visitor, the presence, stood a short distance away. But now he looked neither young nor old, neither familiar nor strange, neither human nor more than human. He simply was. Wei did not bow. Something deeper than ceremony guided him now. The man approached, stopping with several steps between them. "You've come far," the man said. Wei nodded. "I didn't travel as much as I disappeared." The man smiled gently. Then you understand. Wei looked at him. Are you immortal? The man tilted his head slightly. Immortal is a word people use when they see someone who has forgotten to separate himself from the world. Wei absorbed that. The man stepped closer. What do you feel now? Wei considered the question. He searched inside, but there was no inside to search. He searched outward, but there was no outside either. I feel, he paused, like a window without glass. The man nodded. In the world? Wei said softly. It passes through me without resistance. The man reached out and touched a small pebble on the ground. He lifted it and held it up to the light. Do you understand this? He asked. Wei looked. It is a stone, Wei said, and I am not different from it. The man placed the stone back down with reverence. Then you have reached the gate of unbound attention, the man said. Most people never come close. Wei asked. What lies beyond? The man smiled faintly. Nothing. Everything. Life, death, breath, the same as here. The difference is that beyond the gate, you stop leaving traces. Wei felt a warmth in his chest. Not excitement, rightness. The man walked to the edge of the plateau and looked out over the mountains. Wei followed. The view stretched endlessly. Peaks fading into blue distance. Valleys carved by rivers. Forests thick with shadow. The man said, Look at the horizon. Wei did. What do you see? The man asked. Wei answered. The world continuing without me. And with you, the man added. Equally, effortlessly. Wei breathed. The man continued. When you lived in the palace, you saw the world through the shape of Wei. When you trained with Shen, you saw the world from the center of Wei. Now you see the world, and Wei is simply one of the things in it. Wei felt a quiet, expanding stillness. The man said, Wei. Wei turned. You were not here to become immortal, the man said. You were here to stop resisting what is immortal in everything. Wei's eyes softened in understanding. The man pointed to a narrow outcropping that stretched a few steps beyond the plateau. It hung over nothing, a lip of stone suspended above cloud. Stand there, the man said. Wei walked to the edge. The drop was immense. Air moved in slow, powerful currents. Clouds swirled, brushing the cliff in long, pale ribbons. Wei felt no fear, because there was no he to fear. He stood at the edge. The man called out, Tell me what you experience. Wei spoke without thought. I am not on the mountain. I am not above the world. I am not a self gripping a body. I am only experience, no owner. The man's voice softened. And what remains when there is no owner? Wei answered. Life. Just life. The wind rose, flowing around him gently. His awareness widened until the sky felt inside him, not outside. Wei did not step forward. He did not step back. He simply stood, a presence in the world, the world in presence, the point of balance where the self no longer clung, no longer pushed, no longer mattered. The man bowed deeply behind him, not away, to the clarity that had revealed itself. They remained on the outcropping as the wind softened again. He felt no enlightenment, no transcendence, no transformation. He felt natural, the kind of naturalness that was older than his life, older than mountains, older than the idea of a self looking for meaning. He breathed. The world breathed with him. And in that moment, a moment without beginning or end, Wei understood what immortality truly was. The world continues, and when you stop resisting it, you continue with it. Never separate, never alone, never divided. He turned back toward the plateau, toward the sky, toward the valley that remembered, and walked without leaving a trace. Thank you for listening. May you be well.